by the way, we're recording with Danny on the 12th. That'll be my first podcast with my whole head tattooed. I'm tattooing the top of it. I'm tattooing the rest of it.
Really?
Next month, yeah.
Is that painful on your head?
The sides weren't, but I heard the top is pretty terrible. I'll probably grow the hair back at some point, but I just always wanted it done. And if I ever decide to shave it, it'll be there. And then when my daughter's like 16, and I'm like, I got to look as mean as possible. I'm just going to shave it completely. Little boys are going to be like, I don't know. That dad looks kind of rough, you know?
They won't mess with her.
That's good. And I don't even have to be an asshole.
Just have to show up.
Yeah. I can't be an asshole anyway. I mean, I can if I need to be, but do my stretches. I always like loosen up before. It's like my thing.
You almost need to do like breathing exercises and some stretches and take your people through it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Just everybody that comes on, we just put them through a little routine.
Yeah.
For like 5 minutes.
And relax people.
Like, all right, guys. And they'll be like, hell yeah, I'm ready to record. That's cool. Ready to roll, Miss Amber?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Am I good to go?
You are good to go.
I always feel like I'm going to fuck up the intro. I do it every time. What's up, everybody? This is Joe Adams, and welcome to the Relentless Pursuit podcast. Today, we have a wonderful guest on board with us on this beautiful Friday morning. First off, we do have my co-host, Logan Hyder, in the house of Cinema 83.
What is poppin'?
Welcome, welcome, dude. Couldn't do it without you. And we have Mrs. Amber Larkins in the house as our guest.
Hello.
Is it Larkins or Larkin?
It's Larkins with the S.
Okay, I got it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, welcome. We're so stoked to have you. I know Logan's been suggesting you for a while now.
Indeed.
So we scheduled this several weeks ago, and it's working out beautifully, and you're here now.
Yeah, here I am. Excited to be here.
Yes, ma'am. So just like before we get started on your background and everything, just give everybody like a brief description of what it is you do, and then we'll take it back.
Yeah. So I am a photographer. Started in fitness photography and just kind of grew from there into branding, and now doing this new project called Transformation Through Trauma. I've dabbled in a little bit of branding, a little bit of like branding strategy, and also into digital marketing and just kind of a knack of all trades, but photography is definitely my creative outlet.
Oh yeah, I love it. It sounds like you got it going on. It sounds like you're doing something really cool. I'm stoked to get to that because I mean, you obviously work with people that have been through some traumatic stuff, and that's this is a big topic on here is like traumas and mental health and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I'm excited to hear what you're doing with it.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I know that some of the stories that you've covered has been awesome to just hear, and I'm a firm believer in storytelling. So just happy to be here.
That's what we do. We tell stories. It's natural. It's fun. I mean, everybody on here has had like a pretty fucking fantastic story. Well, crazy story, that's for sure. And like they've overcome so much. So it's a beautiful thing to see. I get inspired every time after talking to somebody. So, but yeah, let's bring it back. Tell us about your background, like upbringing, all that good stuff, and then and getting into photography a little bit.
Yeah. So background, I mean, typical kid. I grew up, mom and dad, they were young when they had me, but pretty typical background. Got in college, always wanted to go away for college, but I ended up staying in my hometown, and right after college left and went to California.
So your hometown, is that Cookeville?
Cookeville.
So you grew up there?
Yep.
I didn't even know that.
Born and raised.
So you went to Tech?
There we go.
I went to Tech.
Okay,
There we go.
That's cool. My fiance went to Tech. What brought you to California? What'd you do out there?
So it's funny because California came out of not liking Cookeville. It was Cookeville small.
Like a rebellious thing?
Kind of, yeah.
Was even smaller.
You're like,
back
screw
then,
this
too.
small town. I need to go to the big city.
Well, my parents tricked me. This is the thing. My parents told me, they're like, if you'll stay in Cookeville and go to school at Tech, we'll pay for your whole school.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of a good deal, so I'll just leave after I graduate. But they ended up like, oh yeah, just get loans. We'll take care of it. And then I ended up paying back all those loans.
Like, damn it, guys.
I should have left much earlier, but no. So when I graduated, I was like, I'm out of here. So I wanted to go to LA. I love the big city. I wanted to be in a big city, but I ended up finding a roommate in Orange County. So I lived out in Orange County for about 5 years.
Okay.
And it was a great experience.
Nice. What'd you do out there? I mean, you just hung out, or?
So at that time, I was into fitness. This is before fitness was mainstream, and I was competing here in Tennessee. Had done pretty well. Of course, it was a lot smaller back then. And then when I got out to California, I was like, just graduated college. I'm like, well, I'm going to get a job. But I ended up getting a job in a gym, which is where Flex Magazine did all their photo shoots.
Okay.
So I was able to meet tons of different bodybuilders, and just as people would come in to do these photo shoots, I would get to meet them. Very interesting job. And I just kind of got back into the whole fitness thing. I competed. I won the California State Show. I believe that was in 2004. And, saw a little bit of potential, possibly going pro. I did the USAs in 2005 and just started getting really burned out.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know, you don't really make money going pro.
You don't.
So I'm like,
it doesn't pay.
Is it really worth my time?
Yeah.
So I was just really burnt out with the whole industry. So I just backed out from the industry. And then that's when I met my husband, who's now my ex-husband. But
met him out there?
yeah.
Okay.
He's from California.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then we moved back here.
Y'all both came back here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So what I was kind of in a dark place when he and I met, and I ended up, I'm like, I got to get out of California. Like, I didn't have really close friends, and the one friend that I did have, we had an argument, so we had kind of severed ties at that time. We're friends now, but so I'm like, I'm leaving, but I didn't want to come back to Tennessee, so I went to Atlanta for a year. Stayed in Atlanta, hated Atlanta.
I'm not a fan. I grew up like a lot of my childhood in Georgia and Atlanta. Yeah. I go down there now for like a good concert. Like they get a lot of metal shows that go through there, and I'm like, all right, Atlanta's a good destination for that. But other than that, I hate it. Like the traffic, too many people. It's just I can't stand it.
Yeah,
Atlanta sucks.
So I was in Atlanta.
Sorry, Atlanta guys.
Yeah, no.
The last time I was in Atlanta, I was in Buckhead, and that area is nice. But,
yeah, it's pretty nice.
But I don't even know if I've ever been to like proper downtown Atlanta.
It's the traffic in Atlanta, but the roads. So coming from LA, there's a lot of traffic, but the roads are very, they're very parallel and perpendicular. But when you get to Atlanta, it's just like a mess. It's just like a
chaos.
hodgepodge of mess.
You decide which road you want to take.
Yeah.
As long as you get there, we're good.
And do you even want to take a road? Because some of the people, we would see people like cutting through medians and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And so I was like, I didn't like Atlanta.
So what was real quick before we get too far ahead, because we already left California again, right? Left California. So what was like the culture shock from going from Cookeville to moving across the country? To California? Because that had to have been, what I was saying earlier too, is like Cookeville's not a big place right now, but it's grown a lot over the last 15, 20 years. So like I could imagine it was even smaller then probably. And like it's going from that to LA, it's got to be crazy.
Yeah. Huge culture shock. It was huge. The first 3 months, I struggled a lot. Like I was homesick, but I didn't want to let my family know that I was struggling out there and just really homesick. So I just like, I'm just gonna make this work.
You were like, hey, it's so great out here, guys. And you get off the phone, you're like, fuck.
I'm fucking killing it, dude.
It was great. It's just my family's very tight knit. So for being away from my family it was hard.
Yeah.
At first. But after, I'd say about 3 months, I got used to it, and then I loved it, and I didn't want to come back.
Of course.
What were some of like the main differences, like in the culture shock? Just like I've heard the pace is a lot slow. It is very slow on the West Coast. Like people are kind of like, but I don't know. I'm just so like those kind of things. What do you think it would be that?
I feel like it's slow in the South too.
Yeah, compared to the South, maybe not slower than here, but
it depends on where you're at. I mean, I think if you're in San Diego, where there's lots of, beach area. People are a lot more like laid back. But you're in LA, it's hustle and bustle.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
You know?
like LA would be crazy.
Yeah.
So you were like in LA? Like how?
No, I was about 40 miles south of LA.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
In Orange County. And honestly, it ended up being great that I was out there because I don't think I would have liked being
Actually downtown.
straight. Yeah, just right in downtown. I did enjoy going to visit. The food is amazing. The access to food, healthy food, you know, because I was into weightlifting and bodybuilding and eating healthy and dieting, and that I could go to a place and get a chicken and rice bowl, you know, and even now here in Tennessee, it's hard to find healthy food.
I know California's a little ahead of the curve when it comes to like having those options available like all over the place, as opposed to here. There's a few specific places, you know, but it's not as common. It's like, hey, you want some barbecue or, you know, hot chicken? And I'm like, yeah, I do, but I need to be eating good as well. So
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. It was Shane that said that because he said he grew up, you know, in the Northeast, and he said he moved to California, and he was talking about the pace, so it's totally different. But that's for somebody that came from.
And he went to San Diego.
Yeah.
So he went from Massachusetts, where it's, you know, the Northeast is crazy as shit, like go, to San Diego. And he was like, dude, I was like the hardest worker out there, or one of them, you know, so.
He said that it was great for him because he would just like be himself, and people were like, oh my God, you work so hard.
Yeah. I'll tell you, that was another thing too, because it was so expensive. And I looked at people and I couldn't understand how they were making ends meet living in a single family when it was costing so much to live. So it did broaden my outlook as far as from looking at people and thinking there is more than this kind of like slow 9 to 5 lifestyle.
Yeah.
That I grew up in.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, so moving back forward, you moved back out this way, and you moved to Atlanta. You didn't like it, so
then I moved back to California for a year.
Okay.
I had a property out there I had to take care of. Got rid of that property, and then moved to Nashville.
Okay.
From there, and that was in 2008.
Was that a good move? Were you reluctant?
I was very reluctant, but my husband at the time, he was like, we'll never afford anything in California. It's so super expensive here. Let's just move back. Tennessee's so much more affordable. So my dad had kind of been in his ear talking. So
bring her back.
Here we are back in.
I need my baby girl.
Tennessee. and at the time, it was very funny because I was like, I will never be back in Cookeville unless God just so like says you have to go back.
Yeah.
And then I had to go back.
But hey, at least you got to experience other places, I mean, I think that says a lot, because a lot of people get stuck in, their town and then they never leave. And I mean, I guess that's great for a lot of people, but me, I've always been very nomadic. So, I grew up several different places in the South, and then, I went in the military and I did that for a while. And then I've just done a bunch of traveling, over to Asia and all that stuff, because I love adventure and going new places. But I always came back, back to the South, because I just love it. And my family's very tight knit as well. So after a long time, I seen what my friends, like family relationships were like how terrible, like a lot of, family dynamics are. I realized like, man, I've got something very rare and beautiful, and like, I want to be close to that. So
yeah,
ended up here in Tennessee, and, I'm playing my roots now.
Right.
So it's cool. But
yeah.
So you moved it back to Nashville, and then what? Yeah.
So, during that stretch of time where I was in Nashville, had kids, did the typical things. At the time, my husband did not really want me to work. So I had kind of given up everything for what he wanted, his dreams and his ambitions. And, I'm not going to say I was a perfect wife, because we're never perfect. But I think that there was definitely this kind of intertwined with him wanting to so let me back up just a little bit. I had actually, during this process of meeting him, is when I became a Christian. And so when we got married, it was like, I want my marriage to work. Mm-hmm. I will do whatever it takes to make this marriage work. And he was a very good talker and knew scripture very well and had painted it in such a way that, I really should kind of accommodate. This was the idea of submission. When, the Christian church talks about submission, this was this idea that you this is what I thought. And I don't even want to paint it like this is what he said, but kind of this was the vision that I had of submission. And so I had just kind of given up everything and was okay with that. I wasn't working. I was a stay-at-home mom. And then about 10 years into the marriage, this is when things kind of started going downhill, in the marriage. And this is where I could feel there was a distance. And then about 2 years after that, I learned of an affair. He had changed jobs completely, had, changed, just had become kind of a different person. Mm-hmm. And we, at this time, had 2 kids. And I had been doing photography just kind of as a hobby. I got into fitness photography because why not?
Yeah,
I come out of fitness industry.
Yeah.
I loved it.
You already had those connections.
Right. Yeah. So it was during that time where I began to really, I had to make a decision. Am I going to utilize photography full time? Is this going to be a business or is this going to be just a hobby? But I'm going to have to put it down because obviously when we split, it's like I have to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. Get after it, yeah. 13 years later, after not working and really feeding into his dreams and ambitions, and it's like, what am I going to do? Yeah,
but was being a stay-at-home mom, was that positive for your children and stuff? Like,
I think it was. I mean, it's time that, you have with them that's amazing. Yeah. But I also believe that there's different callings on different people's lives. Yeah. And, I cherish that time. I don't want to say like I didn't, but there was things obviously that I'm supposed to do in this life.
You had goals you wanted to tackle.
Yes.
That were in your heart. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm a firm believer, like I'm very traditionally minded. I'm a firm believer that the man should be able to provide for the family and the wife shouldn't have to work. Like it shouldn't be a requirement unless they want to work. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like
you shouldn't restrict them from working, but at the same time, it's your job to make sure that they don't have to, they don't want to.
Yeah. Like for Lydia example, like, we're both working, but I'm building basically a brand new business all over again. But I want to get to the point to where this is thriving enough to where if she wanted to be a stay-at-home mother, she could. And I would be happy with that. But if she wants to hustle, make some shit happen, I support that. But that's her choice. Mm-hmm. It's not like, hey, you have to work because we're not going to be able to make the bills happen. But that's just my personal viewpoint on it. I think
right. So like a fine line on that where somebody could like take advantage of that for sure.
Yeah, I'm not going to be like, you can't work. Because woman, stay home and cook and clean.
It really comes from a place of good intentions, right? It's like, I want to take care of you to the point where you don't have to do anything. But then at the same time, it comes like, well, you also have to allow space for that person to grow and like go for the things that they want.
Well, there's a lot of gray with it too, because some people want to control. They can use that as like a control mechanism. That's what I mean. It's hey, I provide provide for everyone. Like,
easy to abuse that.
Yeah, So
I agree with you, and I think there's an innate desire in men that says, you are a provider as a man. You are the man of the family. You are a provider. The idea of submission got very confused in my mind. And I think it's a big confusing thing in the church, honestly. Yeah. It's something that it's a slight control, like what you said, Logan, where it's just, it's as long as you're not being manipulated into that, I think it's very healthy to be submissive. Yeah. Because everyone is, and I use that term loosely because everyone should be aligned. The family unit, you have the man who is the provider, the woman who is the helper, and, then take care of the children, right? Yeah. But you have to be in alignment with that. It's never, you also have to be fully confident and comfortable in that role. Knowing that, like if something were to happen, God forbid, like someone pass away or divorce happens or the inevitable happens, that you are 100% confident and comfortable in yourself.
Of course.
Too.
Yeah, and you're capable.
Yes.
You know, because unfortunately, like something does happen, and if you've been a stay-at-home mother forever and you don't have any like work experience, it's a really big fucking struggle after that. You know what I'm saying? Like, because then now you have to provide, because you know anything can happen. But
and that's where I found myself. You know, it wasn't a death, but divorce is similar to a death.
Of course.
And that's where I found myself, where I had been like, what am I going to do with my life, you know, at this time? And so I have a passion to like, I never want a woman to have to feel that. Yeah. I think it's healthy to teach women to like, yeah, you are the helper of your spouse or your significant other, but you don't have to, you're not like attached to them or a part of them to the point of you lose yourself in them.
Yeah.
So is that kind of like what pushed you to make that decision? Was you just kind of felt like you were losing who you were, or you felt like you didn't like kind of believe in that anymore, or kind of what kind of pushed you to like straw that broke the camel's back type thing?
Yeah. So when I learned of the affair, this is when I was shocked. I was honestly, it was shocking, because we come out of the church and he taught a Bible study, and he looked down upon people that had affairs.
There's a lot of hypocrisy.
Lots. And so I was in shock for several months. But I remember I was listening to a podcast, and on the podcast.
Heard of those before?
Have you? On this podcast, she's talking about how you have a choice and you get to choose, and that's your superpower, or that is your power of, you know, the difference between powerless or powerful. You can choose how you're going to respond to certain situations. And this is when I really started to think like, I have a choice in this.
Yeah.
I can let this make me bitter and angry, and I can, you know, let this destroy me, or I can use this to be better. I can use this to be stronger for my kids. I can use this to create something. I didn't know what, but to truly, you know, and there was a lot of rebuilding my own personal relationship with God, because I had a relationship with God through him, not through myself. So there was a lot of that. But I'll tell you, there's this one day we're getting in the car to go to school, me and the kids, and I think at the time, my little boy was like 7 and my little girl was like 5 or 4. And just like every other morning, we're getting in the car, we're putting in this, you know, seatbelts, whatever, and we're driving down the road and we're sitting in traffic at a red light, and my hand's on the steering wheel. And I'm like, guys, you know, mom's working a lot, and I know this because I went from staying at home to working a lot of hours. And I said, it's not going to be like this always, you know, because one day I'm going to be able to support us, and, you know. And my son looks at me through the mirror and he says, you'll never be able to make money like Daddy does. And it hit me. In that moment, it was like my heart just shattered. Like, this is how he views me. This is how he views women. And that was, honestly, it was like I was faced with this right back at that podcast. I have a choice. In this moment, I have a choice. I can let this destroy me, or I can choose to do better.
Yeah.
And
were you still together with him at that point?
No.
Okay, you weren't together. Okay.
This was several months after.
Okay.
I think a lot
this is after. That's why, because you said you went from not working to working, so this is after. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I think a lot of that goes back, you know, you talked about that's how your son viewed you. I think a lot of it goes back to maybe your ex not expressing gratitude towards you in front of your children as they should. Like given it was me, right? Like, you know, Lydia's stay-at-home mom, and your kids see everything. And like, I'm always going to praise her for the things she does at home and how hard she's working to take care of them. And like, I think that like, if he had done that, your kid would maybe totally view it a different way. You know, I think they're like, those impressions last. And so I don't know. I think
like if he understood the value of what she was doing.
Yeah. And because I always am super great. I mean, she cooks dinner for me every night, and I'm just always so grateful for that, you know, because she works all day long, and she still makes the effort to like feed me well and all those good things. And like, that's just huge. You know, I'm so thankful. And, but kids are going to see that stuff too. So I think that mentality, unfortunately, just comes into intention as a couple and as a male. So I don't know. Just got to think about that. This episode is brought to you by Relentless Pursuit. To stay up to date, check out at Relentless_Pursuit on Instagram, Relentless, and also Relentless Pursuit _HQ on Instagram for all the headquarters stuff. Please stay up to date with the podcast. Like, share, review, and subscribe on all the platforms. We'd love your support. We're also looking for sponsors for our episodes, so hit me up at relentlesspursuitlifestyle@gmail.com. And at headquarters, if you're local in Murfreesboro, we are looking for trainers to train out of our studio. Message me, whatever you need to do in order to get more information. We'd love to have you if you're ambitious enough to tackle this. Let's make it happen. And I'm going to pass it on to Amber.
So I know we haven't really got to this part in the podcast yet, but I would love for you guys to inquire a little bit more about the new project that we have that we're launching, the Transformation Through Trauma Project. And we have big things planned for 2023 with this project. I'm super excited about all the things that we're releasing. If you have a story that you would like to share, a trauma and triumph, or if you know someone who has one of these stories that really need to be told, we are telling these stories authentically through visual, with photography, videography, and through the written word and spoken word. So I would love to talk to you more about all the possibilities there if you know anyone.
We love it. And where can they find you? Did you say that?
So, yeah, the Empowerography Files is where I am on Instagram. And I still have fitographyfiles.com, which is my fitness brand. And we are building the website. Well, the website's still a little bit, we're doing some touch-ups on that. But the Transformation Through Trauma Project.com is the Transformation Through Trauma.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
I'll talk more about this later on whenever we start talking about this, but also, so you guys know, she's doing a podcast with this. She's doing photo shoots, video shoots. There's all kind of stuff. So there's a million different ways for you to get involved with this project. Once she kind of explains it more in the episode, you'll kind of understand why it's so special to her and in general. So definitely reach out to her. So you've gone through the divorce at this point, and then was photography the first thing that you started professionally, like work-wise?
Yeah, so I had a really good friend that I had shot. She was doing a lot of amazing things in Nashville. I think she's been on your show, Whitney Weiser.
Shout out to Whitney Weiser, Savage. She's great.
Yeah, she is.
She is. And so I reached out to Whitney. I said, hey, I'm going through a divorce and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know how to shoot fitness photography. So could I kind of come and be a part of some of the things you're doing? And she was gracious and she said yes and brought me into the Nashville Fit Show and sent me a lot of clients. And so forever grateful for her for helping me through that. And we become really good friends through that and have remained friends, for years now. So that kind of sparked the fitness business. So it took it from a hobby to an actual business.
Okay.
And my first attempt of running a business, which is not for the faint of heart.
Nope.
And then I went from that. So fitness is very seasonal, as we all know, especially here in Tennessee, where the weather changes and there's not shows in the winter months. So I started going from that into branding, dabbling a little bit just in brand strategy, digital marketing, and just shooting brands in general.
Yeah.
Lots of the brands I started shooting was fitness brands, but it evolved a little bit into other brands as well. But I'll tell you, so while I was shooting mainly fitness.
When was this, by the way? You said was this like right after the situation with the kid in the car?
I don't remember the exact timeline, but yeah, it was around that time.
Okay.
So it was right after all this happened, kind of right after the split. So not the divorce wasn't final yet, but just right after the split. That was December 2018, so 2019-ish.
Okay.
And So I had get back where I was. I had kind of launched into the branding, but while I was shooting these fitness stories, this is where I would hear these stories. You know, Whitney has an amazing story.
Yeah.
I heard other stories of women that had just overcome these amazing odds, and a lot of it was revolved around fitness. But I'm like, it's really not fair that I'm getting to hear these stories and other people aren't.
Yeah.
So I started praying about how can I use my gift to really share people's stories, because these are inspiring and I'm inspired by them, but I don't know how, I don't have a platform to inspire
we need
other
to get
people
this out there. Yeah.
Yes. So I prayed about it, and I remember specifically I was standing at the squat rack one day, and it hit me, and it was like, why don't you shoot some people in their trauma, like in the dark place that they were, capture that emotion, like really have people feel that emotion, and then capture them in where they're at today. How beautiful of a transformation story.
Yeah.
And I loved fitness, but I also loved business because the mindset's so similar,
of course,
with these two things. And so
it takes consistency
and discipline.
A lot of it. Yep. And discipline. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of similarities. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I started praying about it, and I'll tell you the first, I had this idea. I'm like, I don't know how do I even bring this to someone? Whose story do I tell? And I had run a model call for a fitness brand, an apparel brand that I was shooting, and they needed models. And so I'd run this model call, and I let her pick the models. So there was one model that didn't make it. It was just not what she was looking for her brand. And so I had reached out to her, or I'd reached out to all of them and just said, hey, I'll offer you, a discount on a shoot if you want to shoot. And this girl's like, well, I actually model for a living. So no, I work with photographers. But for whatever reason, she's like, read my story. And she sends me her blog. And I was like, okay. So I read her story. She has this really beautiful story of transformation, how she had lost all this weight through 10 years ago, had lost a child, a 13-month-old baby. And she said that everything she does now, her health, everything, like she does that for this child. She's like, I know she's watching over me, and, and it was just a really beautiful story. And so I said, well, I don't know if you'd be interested, but I've had this thing put on my heart about sharing people's stories. Would you be open to doing one of these shoots? And I approached this very carefully, obviously, because you don't want to break someone.
Yeah.
But she was very willing, and she shared a lot of insight with me through this process. And she and I became friends now. And cool. Later she tells me, after we did the shoot, that this was almost as if she had never had pictures of her and her newborn. So now she had this closure, these pictures of now her. And so the premise of her shoot, and I get inspired. I get visions for these sessions. And with her, we did a cloud that was lit up, and she was holding it like a baby. And it was the images are, even to this day, some of my favorite. They're beautiful. And so she said, this is like shooting me and my baby.
Yeah, give me chills thinking about it. It's just cool. Yeah,
it was beautiful. So this was the beginning of transformation through trauma. So after this, I started wanting to do video with these. And so I reached out to Logan, and we're shooting the first one, I think. And he's like, and I didn't have a name. I didn't have a name for these sessions. I just knew they were,
yeah,
and
he's rolling with it.
He's filming, and he's like, oh, this is kind of like transformation through trauma. And I was like, can I have that? He's like, yeah, you can have that.
He goes and copyrights it real quick. He's like, well, I actually have to buy it from me.
As soon as I left, she just hasn't looked yet. You know what I mean? It's in there.
Yeah. Logan's like, I'll charge you. You can have this for a fee.
And so there it all began. And Logan filmed several, I don't know,
I think 5 or 6.
5 or 6 of them. And I dabbled, like, do I want to include video? Do I not? There's obviously cost, but I felt like this should be a passion project. So at first I was charging nominal fees for these. But over time, fast forward to, I dabbled in a lot of other stuff because I always kind of felt like these were a passion project. And then I was at a business event earlier this year. And I had to run into a business mentor, and he really helped me a lot just that whole week introducing me to people. But he said, Amber, you are not passionate about this branding, strategy stuff that you're doing. He's like, you like it, but you're not passionate about it. But this transformation through trauma, you are passionate about. Yeah. And I said, well, I don't know how to monetize this. And I'm a single mom. I have to make money, And he said, so he kind of planted the seed. And it wasn't until probably a month or so later that I was shooting a retreat, and I ran into a lady who was, honestly, she had vision and insight, and she had a dream about me. And she said that, God showed me this thing that you're working on, and it's a twofold project. And I knew immediately she's talking about transformation through trauma. And she said, that's the thing that you have to focus on. And she said, you look at the people around you. I'm at a business retreat with so many other entrepreneurs. And she's like, you've been placed here and you have all the help that you need, but you have got to focus on this.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
And you just went with it.
I'm like, well, okay. I had already that was confirmation.
Yeah.
Because it was something that had already been very much on my heart and very much confirmed through several people.
Well, it's scary to there's a difference when you're chasing money or chasing passion, right? Because chasing money is kind of easy. Like, you can be creative and there's a lot of ways to make money. Like, you can do a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. But when you're following passion, you really don't know. It's like, how the fuck am I going to make money off of that? But I think if you just follow your heart and you're truly passionate about it, that'll come. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And that's, I totally get it. So you just got to kind of follow your heart. I'm a firm believer in doing that in every aspect of life too. So, yeah. And that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I just want to jump in real quick. Because the next part, can I probably take it to where we're at with the project now. But whenever we did those initial shoots, I've told you this before, but the podcasting stuff, for the audience that doesn't know this, I've had this business for about 4 years, and the podcasting stuff is relatively new. But generally what I do is tell stories, and I do storytelling videos and dialogue videos and tell the story of a business, the owners of the business and stuff like that. But every once in a while, I'll be able to tell a story that's like that. That doesn't really have anything to do with growing a business necessarily. It's we're literally there to tell this amazing story or whatever. And, I believe in the power of stories like you do. And so I do think that my boxing coach's story that I did, I love that video. And he talks about his background. And so I think everybody has an awesome story. But again, sometimes you come across stories like those that are just I still to this day use those as examples of these powerful story videos that, that I could create for someone or, this kind of thing. And so just to put a little note on that, one of them was an Afghanistan war veteran who had literally watched her best friend blow up next to her. She almost had her arm blown off.
Well, she did have her arm blown off.
Well, she still has her arm though.
No, she had it sewed back on.
Oh, she had it sewed back on. See, I forgot about that part.
So when this bomb went off, she said that she went, I guess, I don't understand PTSD myself because I have not dealt with it personally. But she said that she didn't feel anything. So she just looked around and everyone's dead next to her. And she goes running over to help her comrade. And she said the EMTs came and handed her hand and said, hold this and don't look down. And she had no idea that it was detached. She could tell the story way better than me, but
that's wild.
And her friend, her best friend that passed, I think he walked in front of her or something right before it went on, kind of saved her from taking some of the blast too. So an insane story. And we just sat down and she told us this story and we captured it.
Yeah.
And then I used the visuals that she created in her photo shoot as the B-roll for for the picture. So you kind of got to see like the photos and kind of how the photos were set up and done. And then also you hear the person telling their story. And then obviously I captured it. So you see them talking to you too.
Yeah.
And like in that, you know, like you talk about how you had like visions for these shoots and like the setup for them. Right. And like that one, like while we're there, we're still kind of like figuring it out. Like, why don't we paint your whole arm? And she painted her entire arm, like shoulder down, completely red. And like in the picture, she's like looking at her like damaged arm, you know, like her red arm, and it's really awesome. It's just really cool.
Wow.
She could explain it better than I could. But
I'll tell you, it's so funny because with that particular shoot, she and I like to go back and forth with clients, like what resonates with you, because they know their story better than I do, and they will give me feedback, and I'm there as much or as little as they need me. With her, I found an inspiration photo of this lady, and she was like they painted her like white, and she had on this red glove, and it was just an artistic image.
very striking.
But it was striking.
Yeah.
And so I said, this girl was black, and I said, hey, let's do all this, but like from a darker angle. So I look everywhere for a glove, and I can't find a red glove, like nowhere. So right before the shoot, I go into Walmart, and I'm like, I've got to find a prop for this shoot. And I'm walking down the aisles, and I find red paint. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like red paint, we'll do that. So I get the red paint, and we're going to like paint her arm. And then Logan was the one who's like, let's just kind of pour the paint on her. So then we have this image of her grabbing her arm, and the paint is like falling, but it looks like blood. So it's so representative of like the bloodshed that day, the losing her arm, she lost all feeling in her arm. She's getting it back a little bit now, but it just the loss, you know?
So wild. That's like, and it's super creative too, but like you were literally able to tell her story through those photos.
Yeah.
Yes. And her story's been published several times. She had a couple front cover published.
We get her on here.
She would be,
Yeah.
she would be awesome. She also, like before that, was like a record holding basketball player at Clemson.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
She's got a pretty crazy story. But that's just one. And that's a little bit of detail about one of the stories.
Yeah.
Right. So like there was another one that was like, they're crazy. They're insane.
That's
They really
so cool.
are.
Hell
They
yeah.
really
I love
are.
that.
So,
I had no idea. Like I knew you gave me a little baseline of what you do, you know, when we were at Absolute Fitness. And then, you know, hearing it though is like paints such a beautiful picture and representation of what you specifically do. And I love that. That's awesome.
well, and also too, because this is the point, right? Is like it is so beautiful the way that you're able to capture and visualize like the trauma of it, but also that's only half of it, right? So you can kind of explain more about like how you kind of take them to the dark place, but then you also, the whole point is the transformation, right? So then there's always a light side to the shoot and to the videos, right? So like the beginning is usually very like hard, you know, and then it's always like
Uplifting.
that's the whole point of it, right? It's the transformation. So
I'll tell you what I did not expect through doing these sessions. I just thought, hey, we shoot somebody in their darkness and then in their triumph or their come up or their overcoming. I did not expect that people would find healing in this. And after doing several of them and questioning and finding out, you know, what can I do better? We're always trying to get better.
Yeah.
I realized that there is a lot of healing through this because I think a lot of times we don't, as people, we don't take the time to embrace the emotion, like feel it. We stuff it down.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because then it manifests in our life as something else. Right?
Oh, I can relate to that. I mean, I did that for the longest time. You know, I'm like, I'm a tough masculine male. Like, fuck my problems. I got to move forward. You know, that's the best thing to do. Don't let that shit hold me down. But in reality, when you ignore it, it holds you down. When you face them and you feel them and all those things, that's when you really overcome it.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, honestly, it's such a big thing because most people suppress these things. Like on average, you know, most people are too afraid to feel it out. But when you do, it can change your life so much.
Yeah.
And I think the whole process is, and being biased about the video part too, but obviously the photo part too, and just telling you the story and just preparing themselves mentally to go do the shoot and physically doing the shoot and thinking about the themes and all this stuff. And then also like sitting down if we do video and like telling it, with the intention of sharing it to the world. Like these things are super cathartic for these people, right? It's like you said, they really get to like, I think the healing comes from like the transformation of taking that and being able to create something beautiful with it and something that they know is going to help people, right? So like taking it from something that is like so painful to them, using that in such a positive way, I feel like it's just so. I think that's where a lot of the healing comes from.
And it's the impact these people can have. A lot of people are afraid to tell their stories because it hurts or they're embarrassed by it maybe, but depending on the situation. But at the end of the day, like, no, realistically, there's a lot of people out there that can relate to your story. And by you sharing that and showing off what you've done and how you've overcome it, you can have such a broad, massive impact on people. Even if it's one person, you're still making a positive impact, and that's all that really matters.
Very much.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy though? That I was not going to mention this because we never posted it, and I mentioned that we never posted it, but it was actually Danny. I can say it now because she told her story on this podcast.
Oh,
She told she told it a lot in a lot greater detail here than she did in our video.
Yeah, we did.
But the first thing we did was Danny. The first one that I was involved with was Danny's actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually Danny's idea to do the video. She said, I would love to bring Logan in, my video guy, which he was also my video guy.
Logan's just the video guy.
Right. So, we did it, and then that spawned several others. But what you were saying, like, it is multifaceted, and that's what I've learned through doing these. It's way different than what I expected. I did not expect it to be this when I first had the vision for it.
Yeah.
It's multifaceted because it does multiple things. And you're exactly right. It completely helps people impact. I mean, if you know that your story has made an impact and saved someone's life or helped someone overcome depression or whatever, I mean, there's a lot in that.
Yeah.
And
it's so needed, especially in the world we're in today. Like I get caught up with like overhead and bills, and I'm like, man, I'm focused on the money value, but I'm like, no, Joe, I have to constantly remind myself, like, your purpose with this brand is to create light for people and be a positive thing that draws people in. Like, that other stuff's going to come, but never forget the focus of it. Mm-hmm. And, because it's such a needed thing in this world. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, no.
Well, and we have to be able to bring awareness to the things that nobody wants to talk about. Yeah. We live in a culture with social media where everybody puts on, I mean, you guys saw it here with me before we got started. I was like all worried about how I look, right? And we live in a culture where everybody wants to put on their best face always. But like, what happens when we just start being real, start being authentic, start being vulnerable, transparent, all these things, that brings a whole new level.
Oh, yeah.
I
agree. It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool. So
yeah, it's an honor for me to be a part of the whole thing for sure. And I guess the next part of it, you can come back to your story because that's kind of where I re-entered in that part of the story anyways too, because she got back from that trip and that's when we talked about it, and she was expressing the same things, which I'm sure you'll continue to get into, but about how she felt very called to do it. And yeah, I felt very honored then, and I felt honored to have been reintroduced into it. So I'll kind of let you take back over the story at that point.
Well, so coming back from this retreat and having this experience on this retreat, which I'll tell you something so funny. When I got to this retreat that day, we had got there a little bit late because some issues with the flight. And we had like an hour before it was time to go and start shooting. And I lay down on my bed and I'm looking out on the balcony, and there's this little lizard, and he comes up and he's like just sitting there on my balcony. And I realize his skin is like half there, like he's shedding his skin. And I was like, that's weird. I've never seen a lizard, do this before. So what do you do when it's like, it's an experience? You take your phone out and you post a story, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is so awesome. But it hit me. It's like, this is transformational. And this is what is going to happen at this retreat. Little did I know, this is what was going to happen in my life. But I thought this is what happens in a retreat. People shed their skin. They evolve into this new person. Mm-hmm. A few minutes later, the little lizard comes back and his skin's gone. So it was just like a perfect representation of, I felt like where one door was truly closing, and I felt so clearly like God said to me, now is the time. And I think that, I have to be vulnerable as well.
Yeah.
It's a hard place. I have to be in this place where I share my story, and I'm vulnerable with that, and I'm transparent with that, because I can't lead people into this if I'm not doing it myself.
Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah, you got to lead by example. Like if you're going to expect people to like share their stuff and be vulnerable, you better be doing it as well, And
right.
That's what's been cool about this project is I put it all out there. You just got you got to get to where you don't care what people think. And like, obviously, personally, I try to take care of myself, and like, that's different. But when it comes to your life and who you are and being authentic, just put it out there. Like, what do you got to lose by doing so? And, but by doing so, you draw so many people in, and you're able to really like just grow it on a massive scale. And, now you're here sharing your story, and other people are doing it. So it's really cool.
Man, and you experience healing through that.
Yeah.
I have experienced immense healing by sharing.
Of course.
Whether it be on a small level in a small room, or on a bigger level in a podcast or whatever. But I've experienced healing through that, and I want everyone to feel that.
It's an energy thing.
It is.
It's just such good energy, and like, it's just flowing. So I'm always on a high after podcasts, because I'm just like, oh, that was so cool.
Yeah.
Like, this is great. Like, this is like my favorite thing to do, to be honest. So yeah, that's awesome.
So I'll tell you what's crazy. I come back from this trip, and it's like doors begin to open. I reached out to Logan, honestly, just to kind of ask questions like, hey, what would it consist of to start a podcast? I had no idea about any of this. And
I thought that was Joe's. I was about to jump across the table. I was like, man, you turned all your
I checked
alarms
my
off.
alarms.
He did it for once. There was one episode where he checked his alarms before, and he had an alarm go off during anyways, and I gave him shit for it. And then like 10 minutes later, he had another
We went longer than I expected.
And I'm like, dude, I'm so confused.
Those alarms are supposed to be post podcast, and then fucking A. But whatever.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I reach out to Logan, and I'm just like, hey, what, I know you do the Relentless Pursuit podcast. So what does this consist of? What, I'm thinking about possibly bringing on some people to talk about their story, so to give them a more authentic place to share. And he's like, I have one more space for, to produce a podcast. And I was like, really? You do? So then this spawned a whole nother, he started educating me on a whole lot of stuff, and that just kind of worked out. And I've had a vision for a really long time to put these into a book. So like, my vision is a coffee table book, but beautiful images with an excerpt of their story. But I also feel like I could put, because I think while hearing someone's trauma story is important, hearing their triumph story is super important, but people want to know that bridge.
Yeah.
What's that journey that got you from here to here?
Because it doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And so if in this book, if I could also shout out some different organizations that's helped that particular story, that person, that storyteller, then I think, then it gives people hope. Mm-hmm. People, I know when I have been in the depths of despair, when my marriage ended, or, even back up further than that, there was a time when I was very suicidal. And if someone would have handed me a book that said, here's a book of like all these stories of people just like you, and this is how they overcame it.
Yeah.
How impactful is that?
Huge. It's massive. Yeah.
Well, and I was thinking the other day that like whenever you think about like content creation just on a simple level, and content creation nowadays is such a buzz phrase for like social media stuff or whatever, but content creation has happened since human beings have existed. Like a book is content, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point, is that you have audio, visual, and written word, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing, and I don't know if you probably did this on purpose, but one thing that I think is really cool about this is that you will be hitting on all three. Right, so you'll have a podcast, yes, which is audio. You have the visual to it. That's just a big component as well. But you have the audio and visual there. You have the video formats, which will be the video. You have the photos, which is the visual, also visual. And then you have ultimately the book, which is written word. So, and then which is also a brilliant idea that she has, to put like a QR code for each story that links to their video.
Cool.
Right, so like you could be reading the book and then literally just go right then to the video.
That's pretty
from
sweet.
the book.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of intertwining all the mediums together. So it's awesome. I think it's a fantastic idea.
So are you starting a podcast too?
I am.
Oh, cool.
I am. Early 2023.
Logan is mine. He's mine. I'm just kidding.
I need you to share him.
I'll share. All right, that works. I love Logan. I brag on him all the time. Like, he's become like, one, we've become really close.
Yeah.
And two, it's just like we work perfectly together on this shit. Like, I don't know, it's a good team, and he's just been so helpful. Like, forever grateful. So,
Yeah.
Well, you know, I was talking earlier. You were saying earlier about how that person said to you, and I didn't think about this before, but you were saying that they said that there was something that you were working on that has two parts to it, right? And you were thinking, which I think this is an accurate thing to think too, that like it's the transformation. I mean, the trauma and the transformation, right?
And the
like
triumph,
right? The triumph, the trauma and the triumph, which I think is true. But also, like, you know, yesterday when we were talking about this, I was like, you really need to think about this as two separate parts, right? Like the shoots and the podcast. The podcast is its own thing. And so, like a second ago, whenever you were saying that, I was thinking, well, she was definitely right about that too, because that's how in my brain I separated it into two parts. And then when you said that she had said that, I forgot about that. And I was like, you know, it's just funny because we were just talking about that yesterday. I was like, you really need to think about this as two separate things.
And I've never had the desire to start a podcast. It honestly is just to give people an authentic place to share their story, because it's different setting if someone's got a camera right in front of their face and they're sharing this on camera versus, you know, you and I are sitting face to face to each other, just having a conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing about podcasts.
It's all about the environment and also the people a part of it too. Like, you know, because
yes, which is why you're going to be great at it.
Yeah.
Because you have the right message, you have the right personality, you're doing it for the right reasons.
You're authentic.
And like we were saying yesterday, you're going to talk to people that you genuinely want to talk to and that you genuinely want their stories out there because you genuinely think that they're going to help other people, right? So like that's how you do it, you know. And there's this person that asked me recently about like they wanted to start like basically like I don't want to do the 9-to-5 thing anymore. Do you have any advice? Just long story short of it. Like what? But they were asking me like what business to go into, and I was like, well, like what are you interested in? And like essentially their response was like, well, what makes the most money? I was like, well, you could look up like a list of like the top 5 things you can make money online doing. I was like, but ultimately you really need to be like passionate about what you're doing. And so that's why like with you two in particular, actually. Okay, so I don't know where we cut off, probably not too late, but I just want to repeat my last point, which is that because of the passion that you two have for your projects, that's why they will succeed, is basically the point. And I work with a lot of people who do a lot of things, and it's not as frequent as you would like it to be that is the case. And so, yeah.
Well, it's like that guy said, basically got down to like, what's going to make me the most money. But I feel like if you're truly passionate about what you do and you go into it with that passion and you keep that rolling, like you can make a lot of money if you're just truly passionate about it. So like there's a lot of things that can make a ton of money, like that even people will be like, that's not going to make you money. But if you're fucking persistent and you're passionate, you can make it, you know, very financially.
It's like I told a story before about my friend who plays nothing but 2K all the time, you know, and I've told him before, like, dude, there's never been a better time to be a professional gamer, dude. Sit down and stream, make funny videos of you playing the game. He has a great personality, and it's like people, don't think it's possible, or they don't think there's money in it, or whatever, but it's like, dude, would you rather make 45 grand or 60 grand doing something you love, or, you know, 150 doing something you hate? Like,
and that's the thing, too. It's like, I think about it all the time, like, I don't know, at one point, I was more financially stable because I had a piggy bank, right? And then I went all in with this, and it's like, oh shit, like I got to tighten up a little bit. But hell, I'm surrounded because of that, and I'm like living my life passionately and following my heart. I'm surrounded by the best people, and the people make it, man. Like to me, the people on my journey in my life are what like provide so much purpose for me. But also, like I get to be myself. You know, I just get to be Joe, like I've always wanted to, but I get to run my business that way by being myself. And like I get to come in and meet amazing individuals and, you know, share stories, and, you know, I get to create and be creative, but it's all like, you know, on me. And, that's so freaking cool. And I'd much rather struggle doing that than have like 100%. Some job in a finance office, which if you love that, that's fine. But I'd be miserable, like making a shit ton of money, because I'd be like, fuck, man, I'll slave away for somebody else. And that's just my mentality. So I think just follow passion, follow your heart, and you'll be good.
And the other side to that is that you should rather, and most people would, whether they realize or not, rather struggle like struggle maybe more than they are now or whatever, struggle to do something that they love, right? Like you'd rather be struggling doing something that you're passionate about. But I also think like in your situation and in your situation that it's like it's kind of like counter to what I just said, but you have to have that original intention. But my point is that ultimately, like, because you're not doing it for the money, like that will come in waves. Like you'll get so much more money because you're not doing it for the money versus coming in for it just for the money. And like, yeah, you may do things well, but like, it's kind of like whenever you talked about, you know, photography and then this project and you're like, I never really even expected it to even evolve to where it's evolved already. It's because you're not doing it like with okay, how can I monetize this the very best way? You're doing it like, how can I create this to make the most impact, to tell the best story? You know, you're thinking about it in the right ways. So it's developing very organically in a way that will end up producing a lot of revenue, but that's kind of secondary. So my point is that, yes, you would rather struggle doing something you're passionate about, but I also believe that if you are doing something you're passionate about, eventually you'll make a lot more money than you would doing something that you're not passionate about.
Well, life is just too short. It's like life is really short. And maybe this is just because I'm like middle-aged, but, you know, you get to a place where it's just like life is so short. And it's like, do I want to do something that fulfills me and makes me, you know, what is life if it's not worth living?
So to add on to that, you know, I've always bring up my accident, you know, and I was 28 years old and I always had this piece of me. I was like, I just want to do my fucking thing, you know, and I want to inspire people and help them. I just couldn't figure out what it was. So I was just trying to figure out what's the smartest avenue financially and security wise. But then I got hit by a car and it was as near death can get. And that's changed everything. I'm like, life is short. You know, I almost didn't make it to 29 years old. You know, it could have been over at 28, just like that, like literally that close. So it sparked that in me. Like, why would I settle for anything else? I'd much rather like go all in on something I love and I'm passionate about and then slave away for somebody else doing what they want me to do. I don't know. It's just, life is short. So why the hell wouldn't you just at least give it a shot, you know? And even if you go all in, and it burns down, you can always own at the end of the day that you tried, you know, and most people will go their whole life never really trying what they truly wanted to do. And I'd much rather, you know, you get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, so me too. I had this experience. I was, had moved back to Cookeville and, you know, felt pretty down because I was really starting over. And through my divorce, we lost everything. So I was really starting over from like, negative, I felt like. But I struggle with fear a lot, self-limiting mindsets, self-limiting beliefs, because I was told, you know, throughout my marriage, I was told, you know, I was made to feel like I wasn't enough, and I was told, like, you can't do this. You can't ever make this kind of money. You can't ever support our family. And I remember driving past, I was coming home one day and I was driving past the cemetery and I just look over and I'm like, you know, one day I'm going to be there. And what happens? I mean, I'm like, realistically, my life's like probably halfway over. I mean, if you do the math, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, what happens if I just use the second half of my life and I just run towards my goals, towards my ambitions, towards things that fulfill me and make me happy, versus not, or being in fear, or taking a job that I don't like because I'm scared, you know? And I love my family dearly, but my dad has kind of always had this idea of like, you have to have this 9 to 5. And that was not in the cards for me. So I don't know. I feel like you get to a place sometimes in your life where you're just like, from here on, it's just, what happens if I just do it?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and we're kind of changing the game on
Pull
things.
your mic up for me a little bit.
We're changing the game on things. You know, a lot of people nowadays, like you and like what we're talking about, because, you know, in past generations, they were taught like to be workers and like get the 9 to 5, you know, get their pension or get their retirement, all these things that like, honestly, I really don't give a shit about. Because like I said, I almost died at 28. I don't know if I'm going to, there's not a guarantee I'm going to make it to retirement age. So I'm going to spend my whole life to maybe get to relax one day. You know what I'm saying? Because you never know. I mean, it's the facts. Mortality is a real thing. And so but they teach us that because that's what they've always been embedded in. But now like the game's changing a little bit and there's so many options out there, but yet people still think that way. And my dad, I love my parents to death too, but my father was always like, this is good. You should go to school here and like, kind of follow his path. Like this would be a smart idea. But I'm like, I'm not the kind of person that just follows the smart path, I just I follow passion, and so.
That's a funny way to put that.
What's that?
So that was a funny way that you put that. You said, I'm not the person that follows the smart path. He's like, I go run into the wall on purpose, okay?
Okay.
Fuck off.
But you know what I'm saying? Smart, and when it comes to like careers.
It's just funny that you said that.
I do not do smart shit ever.
Listen, Dad, I don't want to do smart shit, okay? I don't want to.
I mean, if it's what fulfills you, right?
And my parents, since, we're so close and they've grown to really appreciate like what I'm about, and they support me in every single way, and I'm so grateful for it. But I think they just kind of had to see me grow into my own, and now they really appreciate that. So, but anyways, I think it's just a mentality thing, and we've been a lot of people are just raised that way. So
it is, and I think they worry, like my parents will worry, and it's my dad more than my mom. But my mom's more of a free spirit, but my dad is, he worries that he wants me to be able to support myself and support my kids, and and he doesn't always know everything that goes on because he would worry too much. So.
Yeah. I know you kind of want to keep things under wraps sometimes. How old are your kids, by the way?
11, and my little girl will be 8 in January.
Dang, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Parenthood. It's the hood, that's for sure.
Do you co-parent with your ex, or
we do?
Okay, all right.
We actually. So I have completely just forgiven him. I mean, there are times where, I still have triggers from certain things. He has some narcissistic tendencies, and I still get triggered by some of those things. But for the most part, we get along really, really well. And he's a great dad. He is a great dad.
Yeah.
And he helps me out whenever I need it. The relationship that we have has allowed me the opportunity to be able to go and shoot these retreats, from different places and meet amazing people and go to business conferences. And so I'm thankful, and I try to let him know that I'm very thankful for the things that he does do for us, So it's just didn't align as a good marriage.
And that's the thing. Like a lot of people get into something like that. You just got to chalk it up, because I could say stuff about like my past relationship, and there's a lot of stuff like it really fucked me up in a lot of ways, and I could get mad about it, or just be like, I don't hate her. Like, we're just not the right people for each other, and then we're better off. Because if I sit there and think, oh well, poor pity me, and I get mad about specific situations, like that just doesn't do good. That goes into your energy, and you don't want that. If you just talk it up like, we're just not the right people for each other. Like, there's someone there for her. And, I found the love of my life, so it just worked out perfectly, but right. I think this is what you just really got to chalk it up to, and just forgive and move forward.
Yeah.
How are you guys able to establish that kind of dynamic as like co-parenting? Because I know a lot of people struggle with that kind of thing.
I really would, I'm hesitant to even answer that question, because I don't want to make it out like I had this amazing epiphany or self-growth, but I do feel like in the circumstances, and just the way that when he had this affair and I learned about it, I said, don't come home. And he didn't. And there was never really a, hey, I'm sorry that I did this, or nothing. It was almost like there was a blame against me. Well, you were just not a good wife, and, you've been spying on me, and you've been, it was my fault. So I just had to get to a place in my own walk, in my own life, where I'm like, if I let this eat at me, it will destroy me.
Yeah.
So the best thing I can do is move to a place of forgiveness, even though I was never asked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was never told. I was never told that, hey, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Will you forgive me? But I had to get to the place where I was just like, I'm
doing it for yourself.
Going to forgive. Yeah, and for my kids.
Yeah, and for your kids, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and expecting an apology to move forward, and like a lot of people make that mistake, but I know. It's like that book I've referenced a million times, The Four Agreements.
Still sitting on my coffee table right now.
Yeah.
I get it.
Well, it says don't make assumptions, but like also don't have expectations on, it like that, right? Like you shouldn't expect it, just it doesn't change you
It'll
by
eat
any
at
means.
you forever.
It will. So.
If you expect someone to do something and they don't do it, it's just going to eat at you, and that doesn't bother them.
Yeah.
They're living their life.
Exactly. So, well, I'm glad you moved forward from that and y'all are able to do that. That's pretty cool. And kids are growing.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great for the children that's the scenario.
Yeah.
And it's unique.
Much healthier than a lot of situations for sure. So moving forward, you were talking about the journey, like when you realized you wanted to pursue that and everything. Did you go over details of like your pre-launch and everything with that, or, because we kind of want to cover like the details of the pre-launch and everything that, Transformation Through Trauma is going to be doing in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So, transformation, it already is a visual basis from the trauma that we're shooting, that getting people. So there is an interview process that I've developed because I don't want to take someone in and try to shoot them if they are in the middle of their trauma. This is not a place that I want to push someone into breaking.
Of course.
So I want them to be in a healthy state when they come in to tell their story, so that when we get them in the trauma part of the session, that they can fully experience that and embody that feeling again, so that then they can release that.
Like they've already moved forward from that.
Yes.
And they've done their transformation. So going back there isn't it's not a difficult
Yeah.
task.
Yeah, and some things you never heal from. I mean, different traumas are different.
Of course.
Losing a child, I'm sure you never heal from that.
But you've come to terms with it. You've owned it in a different way.
At least to the point that you're ready to share it.
Yeah. Some people just aren't ready for that. So
Right.
Yeah.
So there's that part. Then we do the transformation part, which these pictures could really be used for anything. I mean, if someone's their transformation has been business, then we shoot them empowered in their business. If someone's transformation is losing weight, then we might do a fitness shoot, whatever that is. But then also my vision with these sessions is to really pull in a videographer to film them telling their story. This would be more of a polished version, a shortened version, something that really just kind of shows the not the bullet points, but shows the emotion, but in a very shortened little pops of attention span,
Of course.
and then will show some of the the B-roll of the behind the scenes. It'll also show some of their life in general, and then taking from that, I would love to have all of these people be in a setting like this. I don't foresee my podcast necessarily being in studio right away, because I would love to talk to people all over. I'd love to bring in, people, specialists that specialize in PTSD or abuse or kids coming out of the foster care system. I've shot one of those stories. So just depending on what the trauma is, I would love to be able to, my whole vision and mission behind this is that people find help that they need. They find help and healing and knowing that they are not alone in these things, because we feel so alone. When you're in the depths of despair, you feel alone, but you're not alone.
Yeah.
We've all gone through it. It feels like that when you're in the middle of it. And then putting them into a book so we can get this out to more. And my vision with the book, my goal is to do 20 over these next few months, or even over the next year. I'm not sure exactly, because these sessions take some time. They take time planning. Mm-hmm. They take time and vision, and then getting the right people to share their story.
You don't want to rush it. It's something you want it to be perfect. It's something you would definitely want to perfect before you put it out there. And we will have a copy of it right here on the table. So I think it'd be really cool, or at least have it in here. That'd be awesome. I'd love to share that with people, but that's really cool. Hell yeah.
I would love to do the first book, just maybe entrepreneurs, because I feel like they could really benefit from the storytelling and the pictures and the content from it. But going forward, I would love to do specific books, like a book on just PTSD or a book on just women that have come out of abusive relationships or men even.
Chicken Noodle. Yeah. What's that series? Chicken Soup for the Soul? Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that what it? Chicken Soup?
Chicken Noodle Soup, something?
Chicken Soup for the Soul, how they did a version just for moms or just for...
okay.
Like, I want to do different series of these
You never heard of that? Chicken Noodle Soup for the Soul?
No, it's just chicken soup.
I don't know.
It's just chicken
I get it wrong every time. Every time.
I don't know.
Well, it's a very popular series of like self-help books, basically. I guess the self-help books, but yeah, it's like there was like one that was just like a regular one, and then after that, it got like very specific to to groups, So like,
interesting.
Chicken Soup for the Soul for men and for women, and for like she was saying entrepreneurs and for teens and for and like there was a bunch of different. So kind of like taking the same idea into different groups of people.
Yeah.
The first group being entrepreneurs.
And you think of the end user for this, like if you knew someone that was struggling with PTSD and you hand them a book of 20 other people that have these stories and these images and these videos, I mean, and organizations that help them through their journey.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be impactful.
Well, yeah, I agree 110%. Yeah, that's cool. So will you just be working with women or what?
So my background really comes, my passion is, I love working with women.
Yeah.
I relate to women really well. Maybe that's because I am one. But I don't want to limit this to just women.
Yeah.
I've really prayed a lot about this, whether or not I should just do women. And I feel led to share it. I mean, men have hurt too.
Yeah.
And so I would love to extend this to anyone.
That's really cool. Yeah, and it's I mean, kind of the theme of this podcast, like for a while, we shot with just men, but now you're like the 10th woman to come on here or something like that. And like most of our viewers on Spotify are women, like 70% which is crazy, Yeah. So I think it's been really cool because at first I was like, I don't know what it's going to be like, I don't know. I mean, I can talk to anybody, but I got men talking about like masculinity and just like their stuff. And then we started, I think Danny was the first, and it's just been a trickle effect, or Whitney actually. Whitney. And then we just kept it going, and it's been really cool getting both in here, and it's just honestly, and it's helped the podcast so much more too, because why limit yourself, right? I mean, because that's what you're getting at is like, if we just shot with men, we wouldn't have those female watchers and viewers and stuff like that. So I think it's just helped us grow tenfold, and it's just really cool. I don't know. We're getting stories from everybody.
Well, like we were talking about for your podcast too, like what, that was a different reason that it was going to be limited. But like with the podcast, we were saying like you want to be able to talk to anybody you want to talk to,
Yeah.
So
I just don't want to limit it. I don't want to limit the stories because impact is impact.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and different people relate to different things.
Yeah. I agree. So that's really cool though. So you got that coming on, and that's the whole future of what you're doing. I mean, I think you got some great ideas flowing. I know you're going to put that to action and make it happen. I'm like I said, I'm already stoked to see your books start flowing out. We're going to get some copies in here. That's for sure. Because we'll be working with, PTSD vets and, a lot of different people, and like, hey, check this out. Look at these stories. Mm-hmm. This can have an impact on you as well. But what else do you want to touch on as far as all that goes? Anything else?
No, I mean, I am still, I had talked to someone just last night, and she's like, I know you're doing some different things. And so I think it's confusing to people. They don't know exactly what I'm doing these days. But I still love shooting fitness. Fitness will always have a major place in my heart because it's helped me through a lot. And I know fitness has helped a lot of people through a lot of things. So I hope to always photograph athletes because I love the mindset. And I just love athletes in general. I love the industry. And then also branding, just mainly for photography, has always been a vehicle for me. But I do feel like there's a bigger purpose and mission behind it. But in just saying that, I would still love to shoot businesses and branding, and I'm very actively shooting retreats, which are super impactful.
Yeah.
So those retreats that we did, I didn't even realize my mic was still on. Whoops. The retreats that we did the app for a little bit in.
Yeah. She was telling me a little bit about that. Yeah.
So I think when Whitney was in here, I was like, yeah, Amber goes to those, I think. And now you're like, those retreats. I'm like, yeah, Whitney's retreats.
Yeah, I know. She's going to get me connected with somebody with that too.
Brittany.
Yeah, Brittany Turner.
Brittany would be a good person to get connected with.
Cool. We're going to make it happen.
Well, because you being a vet, and they do the Heal the Heroes, which is an amazing program and organization. And, they are always looking for sponsors, people to sponsor the vets to go there to that private island and be at one of those retreats. And it is transformative.
Of course.
They are transformative.
And that's the thing. I mean, and something I was going to touch on with that too. And you talk about the transformation in fitness because it's always your passion. And same here. Like when I've been in my worst spots, like just going and training and just getting in here and just focusing on that just pushes you in so many ways. And that's, we're going to be working with the vets. And it's just this overall transformative experience. Like, they're going to be getting fit. But on top of that, you learn so much like mentally about yourself. And it just shows you how to appreciate like hard work and driving yourself and dedication and discipline and all those things. I mean, fitness really does translate into every other aspect of life if you allow it to, like your careers. You can apply that mindset to your careers, your relationships, anything. I mean, it all comes full circle. And I think fitness is, like I always tell people, this is a good starting point to get the rest of your life accelerated, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So I've learned some of the most valuable lessons through competing, through fitness. Yep,
exactly. So, I mean, even me, like because of the shape I was in when I got my wreck, like that saved me. Like doctors straight up said that, and I thought it was wild. Like I'd be dead if I wasn't in the shape I was in at the point possibly. So it just, can save your life too. So it's super cool.
And it keeps you young.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, that's the thing too. Like a lot of people get older and they're in their 50s, right? Which isn't old, or even 60s, which isn't old, I don't think. And they're like, oh man, like just I ain't moving like I used to. I can't do this and that. And I'm like, it's because you stopped moving. Like you started holding the remote instead of weights. Like you stopped moving. But if you keep moving, you're going to keep moving. Obviously there's tragic things that happen, but that's the whole thing.
People at my age already say that drives me fucking wild. I'm like, shut up, dude. You're fucking 27 years old. Stop it.
Yeah, and I try not to like shit on people, but I'm like, this is what I've been through.
Yeah.
I've broken my whole entire body, and I'm doing more than I ever had before. And it's not to like, it's kind of a flex. Like, hey, I don't want to hear your excuse because you're just that's in your head.
The body is resilient.
Yeah, it is
so resilient. And I did one of the girls that first inspired me to do the transformation through trauma. She had cerebral palsy. And she come to me to do a fitness shoot, and she said they told her she would never work out because she had cerebral palsy. And here she is like doing squats, and she has abs, and she has like muscles. And I'm like, whoa.
Because she wanted to.
So inspiring.
She put that chip on her shoulder. Like, watch me.
Yeah.
I'm big about chips on the shoulder too.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. that'll get you, that'll put a fire in your ass for sure. Yeah. So I love it. But wait, is there So I do want to ask, how do we get involved? How to get involved with all this?
Yeah.
What
so
people do?
We're in the beginning of kind of doing all of these things, but supporting the podcast. So that's up and coming. With Logan's going to help me out with that. But if anyone who wants to support that, I'm always looking for sponsors for that. I'm open to taking on investors, which as this project gets, some notoriety, and I do expect I expect to take this as big as I can take it.
Yeah.
So, I would, for an investor, anyone that wanted to co-author the book with me, anyone who wanted to have their businesses, mentioned in the book, there will be a push for the book getting out there. The great thing about this book, let's just say the first 20 entrepreneurs that come through doing these sessions and share their stories, you have then 20 entrepreneurs pushing this book out to their audiences.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing network that you're building. And I feel like it's a win-win on every side.
Of course.
So if someone feels open to sharing their story, I would love to cover it, as long as they're in the place to truly be able to share it. And then aside from that, I mean, besides the financial support, just any support in general, just telling other people, sharing things, following us on social media, keeping up with kind of what's going on. I'm still learning doing a project this big, but I want people to get involved as much as possible and just follow along the journey.
We'll do what we can to get it out there for you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we'd love to help in any way possible. So I'm excited and I'm inspired by what you're doing, and I'm so excited to see it come to fruition and just do some amazing things. It's going to be badass, Miss Amber. So
perfect time. I got about 20 seconds before the cameras go. All
right. I think we're good. Anything else?
That's it.
We're good to go. Awesome. Well, hey, Amber, thank you so much for coming in. We truly do appreciate you, and we look forward to having you back and seeing where things go for you.
All right. So, thank you for having me.
Hell
It's been awesome to see you two talk. A long time coming.
This has been great.
I've known both of you for like 4 or 5 years at this point, and now look at this.
Here we are.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful thing.
Hell yeah.
We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.